If you ever hit a goal and still felt like it wasn't enough, or you feel like you're behind on your manifestations, this video is for you. I have worked with thousands and thousands of clients who have built incredible success on the outside and still feel empty inside. And the problem isn't the results, it's how they're measuring themselves against their goals. What I'm going to share today isn't about lowering your standards, and it's not about settling for less by any means, because you're allowed to want more. And in fact, you're built for more. That is why you were put on this planet, is to elevate your consciousness through your desires. But if you don't shift how you measure your life, you will keep achieving and still feel like you're losing. And oftentimes you'll stay stuck because you reach an upper limit. And I'm going to share with you today why that is. If you're new to my world, I'm Sonia, certified energy leadership manifestation coach. I have helped thousands of clients manifest success the soul aligned way. Today, I'm going to show you why the way you measure success is keeping you from manifesting your desires, the difference between living in the gap versus the gain, and how to rewire your identity so you actually feel fulfilled while growing. The ideal version of you is infinite. It actually has many, many potentials in the quantum that you can access. As long as you're evolving, there will always be another level, another goal, another version of better. But if you measure yourself against that, you will always feel behind. Think of it like chasing the horizon. No matter how far you walk, it keeps moving. So you think the problem is, I need to go faster or I need to do more to get there. But the real problem is you picked a finish line that doesn't exist. And that's what keeps most people stalled in their manifestation, because you're measuring yourself against where you think you should be instead of looking at where was I 6 months ago and how far have I come? And that is where your power is, that so many people are missing. So there are two ways to measure your life. One is the gap, which looks at where you are and compares you to where you should be. And it creates pressure, anxiety, inadequacy, comparison. And the other is the gain, which looks at where you are versus where you started. And this, when you look at the gain and manifest from the gain, it creates confidence, momentum, and stability, and actually anchors into the identity of your higher self. Manifesting from the gap is a distortion that keeps you from creating momentum in your manifestations. And it keeps you in that feeling of low key unfulfillment that keeps you looking at the top of the mountain like it's going to be this huge feat to get there. And no matter what steps you take, you feel like you've barely moved. And that's oftentimes where people give up on their dreams. And I'm going to tell you why that is and give you the tools that will change everything. So be sure to stay until the end. Now, when you master the gain is where the magic is, because the gain is about turning around and seeing how far you've already climbed. And that actually is what's going to give you momentum. So let me break this down for you in a visual. Now, we'll dive into the imagery here, and don't mind the art. I want you to remember that your brain is like a highlight reel. So in the gap, it's focusing on what is missing. And that is actually the brain's bias, is to focus on what's not working and what is missing. So the gap looks like this. It's the space between where you are. So let's pretend like you're here, and where you want to be, which is over here, right? Your brain will constantly look to keep you in the gap, because that is what the brain's job is to keep you safe. And so, like I said, it's going to keep you in the gap because it wants to keep you focused on what's missing to protect you. That is what the brain does. What's not working. And then when you focus on that, because you're like, I want to get over here, but I'm over here. And your brain is going, no, but keep focusing over here, right? You're going to stay frustrated and stay in the gap forever. But if you focus on each gain, you can know what the next step is. When you focus on each gain, you can know what the next step is. So let me show you what that looks like. If you're at step 2, headed towards the top of your mountain, or let's call it a target, if you set goals, right? And you want to get here, the fact that you're at this step tells you, or should tell your brain, that you have what it takes to get to this step, because it's not that big of a gap. So you probably know exactly what you need to do to get to this step, but your brain will continue to keep you focusing on over here again, because that's what it does, and that's how it protects you. The more you take the next best step, notice I said the next best step, because that's another tricky thing the brain does. It tries to make the next step this huge thing that has to happen, and that's not true. For example, as I'm doing these YouTube videos, for me, one of the ways that were kind of keeping me stuck, so to speak, is like, oh my God, I have to do all these things to get to record a video. I have to, prepare what I'm going to talk about. I have to think about what I'm going to talk about. I have to put the lighting and the computer and all the things. But when I shifted my mindset, my thoughts to thinking, well, I'm here and I don't know what the end result is going to be, and that's okay. I actually kind of erased the end result. Let's erase that from my mind so that I wouldn't get overwhelmed, because I know myself, right? I said, what if I focus on the next best step? What could the best next step be for me? And that's a question you can ask yourself. I definitely know I can come up with a topic to talk about. I definitely know, and you can actually make a list, right, to show your brain. I know that I can, and excuse the writing, can come up with a topic. Check, I can do that. I know that I can set up lighting and a microphone and all of that, right? And I know that I can imperfectly edit the video for now and publish it, because I've done it before. And even if I didn't, I'm resourceful. I can always look at how to do that. And so you start to create evidence. And when you do this more and more over, remember, everything is about compounding evidence to show your brain. And what ends up happening is you're actually rewiring your brain, and you're reinforcing the identity of, I am someone who grows, and I am someone who is capable of taking the next step each time, because each time you take a next step, you build confidence, and each step that you take compounds to get to your goal. So I had a client that, we'll call her Sarah, just to give you like a real life example. She, from the outside, had everything. And when I tell you everything, I mean everything. She had the success, she had the income, she had the homes, the kids in the great schools, the recognition, the notoriety, the great career. But internally, she felt completely unfulfilled. And I have permission to share the story, by the way. So what happened there was, she was standing at the top of the mountain, right? And because she didn't look back to see how far she had come and who she had become, the identity of the woman she had become, she could no longer see anything else. And she hadn't anchored into the identity. So she felt, that's where people start to feel unfulfilled, because you haven't looked back or even celebrated the steps along the way. This is something that I teach a lot to my clients, is to celebrate how far you've come, because that's what's going to anchor the identity. Plus, she really wasn't manifesting from her own unique blueprint, from who she was meant to be in the world. And this could be another video. But because she was a high achiever, she kept, still staring at the higher something that she couldn't quite figure out, and she wasn't fulfilled. So her brain kept saying, every time she took a next step towards something, which at that point she couldn't even figure out what she wanted, she was just kind of throwing spaghetti hoping it would stick. Her brain kept saying, Not enough, not enough, not enough. No matter how many accomplishments, no matter how much money, no matter how much anything. And by the way, the key of true soul aligned manifestation is alignment and coherence. And that's exactly what my I Am Manifested app helps you with, so that you manifest soul aligned desires from your own unique blueprint, and you don't have to find yourself at the top of a mountain that was never yours to begin with. So if you're interested in this, I'm going to put the link in the show notes. You can get on the wait list for when that is launched. Anyway, when Sarah and I worked together, we didn't chase more goals. In fact, when she came to work with me, I didn't even ask her, what is something you want to manifest? What we started doing first was looking at her blueprint and anchoring her into all of the past gains of her life. Because again, this was somebody who was a high achiever. She had really achieved a lot of success in her life. So we focused on that. We focused on shifting, the inner landscape and looking at her design, her blueprint, and how she's meant to manifest. And what ended up happening was she created incredible success that was truly soul aligned, that allowed her to feel that sense of fulfillment. She felt proud of herself. She felt grounded and fulfilled. And now she is one of the top therapists in the state of New Jersey, because she finally was truly in alignment with her vision of the top of the mountain, right? So, reminder, confidence is not built from achieving more. Your brain will trick you into doing that because it likes to keep you busy in a hamster wheel of chasing, but it's actually built from recognizing the progress along the way and seeing how far you've come and who you've become. Every time you measure your gains, you're going to create evidence for the brain, you're going to rewire the brain, and you're going to reinforce the identity of I am someone who grows and is capable of creating success. So the practice that's going to help you after you watch this video to create momentum in your manifestations and to anchor into the identity of the person who is capable of getting what it is you desire one step at a time is, the first thing is you're going to journal. What must I believe about myself to succeed in this next step? The next step, not the entire staircase, just the step. What is the next tiny action I can take right now? Again, when you focus on this, chances are you're going to become overwhelmed and you're going to pull the plug from taking action. So if you focus on the small steps, you can start to show your brain and your nervous system that, oh, yeah, I'm available for, coming up with a topic for my videos, or setting up, creating the setup, or editing the videos, and I don't feel overwhelmed. Next, you're going to celebrate your wins. You're going to celebrate your manifestations, your identity shifts, the steps you take along the way, because celebrating is going to anchor them daily into your identity, into your nervous system, okay? Because identity follows evidence. So you're showing the brain the evidence to anchor into it. When you treat the goal as the destination, as the thing that is going to give you the confidence, the happiness, the purpose, you lose. You are constantly going to find yourself chasing something else and not fully fulfilled. But when you treat it as a compass that gives you direction, you win every step of the way. Because remember, clarity doesn't come from seeing the entire staircase. It comes from taking the next step. I want you to commit to your future vision by dropping in the comments, what is one way you've grown in the last 18 months that you haven't given yourself credit for? Drop it in the comments. And if this video shifted you in any way, please be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the future teachings and activations.